We're not being treated fairly by all judges.
Oh, that's a subject. So you're saying that you don't like some of the rulings, some of the court orders?
I think the rulings will be overturned, yeah.
Let me ask you about one man and one court order. Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He's the Salvadoran man who crossed into this country illegally, but who is under a protective order that he not be sent back to El Salvador. Your government sent him back to El Salvador and acknowledged in court that was a mistake. And now the Supreme Court has upheld an order that you must return him facilitate his return to the United States. What are you doing to comply?
Well, the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that, And just so you understand, the person that you're talking about, you're making this person sound, this is a MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in lots of skirmishes, beat the hell out of his wife, and the wife was petrified to even talk about him, okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland.
I'm not saying he's a good guy. It's about the rule of law. The order from the Supreme Court stands, sir.
He came into our country illegally.
You could get him back. There's a phone on this desk.
I could.
You could pick it up, and with all the power of the presidency, you could call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back right now.
And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that.
But the court has ordered you to facilitate that.
I'm not the one making this decision. We have lawyers that don't want to do this.
But the buck stops in this office.
No. I follow the law. You want me to follow the law? If I were the president that just wanted to do anything, I'd probably keep him right where he is.
Court.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, that was a clip of Donald Trump on ABC News talking about how it's not him who's making the decision to refuse to bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador, where he was wrongly deported. It is his lawyers. So first and foremost, can I have your reaction to what we just saw and the validity of this claim that somehow Donald Trump can't do anything here, his hands are tied. He is but the mere president of the United States. It's his lawyers who are calling the shots.
Yeah, I had two reactions when I saw it. The first was, boy, did he just offer a gift up to the lawyers who are challenging this, because the judge and the justices, ultimately the Supreme Court, are not going to accept that at all. And he essentially conceded that he did have this power, but that he was being blocked by his own legal team. Yeah. And that's like literally a concession that is a gift, like I said, to the folks who are trying to get this guy back from the El Salvadorian prison system. The second reaction I had, Brian, was he seemed in that moment a sort of a pathetic old man. I mean, it was actually like in that moment, I thought, wow, this is kind of a window into who he is, because there was a part of me that thinking he's pushing this off on others. But there was a part of that moment that when you connected it up, particularly with some of the other stuff, like the Photoshop comment about the knuckles, where I thought, he's just a really old man who is actually not in touch with what the hell is going on as an administration. Like sometimes you think he is being cagey and strategic in saying, oh, it's not me, it's someone else, or look at this photo. Here, I got glimpses last night of a guy who is elderly, who is sort of deluded, right? There's no question, like he has a lot of false information going around and conspiracy theories going on in his brain, but who is actually being told things by people who are actually running parts of the government and parts of foreign policy. And he's just sort of like a ship bobbling on the ocean, like, okay, I guess that's what it is.
Right. I mean, in a way, he is the exact thing that he had accused Joe Biden of being for all of those years. I mean, here's the thing, if you just transpose Joe Biden into the seat where Donald Trump was, and he said the exact same thing, that, oh, this guy clearly had MS-13 across his knuckles. And I mean, look, anybody who's used any operating system or computer after Windows 99 can see that it was just added in Arial font after the fact, can tell that was not actually a tattoo. But I mean, if Joe Biden had said that exact same thing, it would be nonstop media coverage proving their thesis out that this guy is just in the throes of cognitive decline. And so to your exact point, with somebody like Trump, I mean, at a bare minimum, it shows that he is wholly incapable of exercising judgment that should make people feel confident about his ability to, I don't know, negotiate trade deals on our behalf, or a much scarier prospect to sit across from somebody like Vladimir Putin and know that he's able to comport himself in a way that's going to redound to the benefit of the United States. I mean, if this is the judgment that he exercises with something so simple as just being able to identify what is a real tattoo and what is not a real tattoo with really basic Arial font on an image, then imagine what he's doing in those rooms. I guess it shouldn't come as a surprise then that we're now in the throes of a voluntary recession with him at the helm.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that you put this in the context in which it happened, of a longer interview in which he made these other gaffes. Because saying that it is his lawyers, who are essentially making this decision, in a different administration with a different president, you would say, okay, he is being careful. He is being judicious because he doesn't want to interfere in the due process rights of this individual. Of course, here it's 180 degrees from that. He's actually here saying it's the lawyers who don't want him to have judicial review. Right. It's the lawyers who don't want him to have due process rights. And I, the president, just sort of listen to them. Yeah. Even though this is, as the Trump folks are the first ones in court to be saying, this is a matter of national security. This is the president's prerogative. This is the presidency at the apex of its power, negotiating with foreign leaders. And he didn't seem like, when he was giving the answer in the clip you just showed, that he was at the apex of his power. Right. He seemed actually quite powerless. He seemed to be saying, well, I could do this, but the lawyers don't want me to, or don't let me, or whatever it is. Right. And that is, like you said, could you imagine if Joe Biden gave an answer around a question of foreign policy? Why are you doing X, Y, and Z? And he referenced, forget about blaming, he referenced the lawyers.
Yeah. I mean, he would seem like a powerless, empty vessel. Again, the exact thing that so many on the right have accused him of being, and now Trump is displaying that exact behavior. I have to ask, in terms of the lawyers who have been in this courtroom, if Trump is kind of pinning the blame on them, does this expose them to any legal exposure, any liability by virtue of the fact that now you've got Trump publicly saying that, I would love to bring this guy back. It's just that the lawyers over here, the people who have been going in front of a judge every day, they're the ones who are stopping me.
Yeah, I do. I think it, like I said, my first reaction was this is a gift to the lawyers trying to get this guy back, because the lawyers for the government have been saying it's not us, it's the president. Yeah. Right. It's not up to us to do anything. Remember, they were filing those sort of bullshit filings.
The daily updates. The
daily updates, right? Where they were basically saying nothing.
Just saying, like, they were so afraid not to offer up anything that could be incriminating for them, that they were basically just saying, this is a comment that Donald Trump made today, signed Correct. The lawyer.
Right. And here, the comment he's made is actually pointing back at them. So I think if I were a judge, my first question to them would be, well, apparently you do have the authority here to get him back, so go get him. And the president said he can. So what the hell have you been telling me all along? I think you have to match up. And I'm sure the lawyers are all over this for the ACLU and Democracy Forward. Democracy Document has been covering these cases. And I'm sure that they're matching up what the lawyers have written in their briefs about who has what power and what can be done and can't be done with what Donald Trump just said. And I suspect we are going to see some, shall we say, gaps between those two.
Well, I do want to ask a question in fairness. How much of what Donald Trump says in public, when he's not in front of a judge, when he's not in a courtroom, is actually admissible in court? I mean, Donald Trump can go out there and really just lie until his face falls off. And at the end of the day, he's not saying it in front of a judge. We know he's going to lie in public. And frankly, we all have the right to lie in public. And so can you kind of square that circle for me?
Sure, absolutely. Look, I'm not saying he can't be charged with perjury for lying in public, right? And he can't be charged with perjury at all because the Supreme Court gave him immunity, which is a whole other set of problems that you and I have talked about. Yeah. But that's different than whether or not it is admissible as evidence of what the president intends, right? There is in the federal rules, rules of evidence about admissibility, and normally statements made outside of court are what's referred to as hearsay, but there are hearsay exceptions, one of which is for admissions by a party opponent, and the other is for statements that go to state of mind. So in this instance, his statements about what he can or can't do, number one, are admissions to the extent that the government is saying he can't do this thing, or the lawyers can't do this thing, or the lawyers haven't, said one way or the other, right? They're admissions. But in any event, it goes to Donald Trump's state of mind, which is ultimately what the government's defense is here. The government's defense is the president of the United States has to balance a zillion considerations in interacting with foreign governments. It has to decide, how does asking for this guy back, how does it fit with trade policy? How does it fit with security? How does it fit with fighting gangs, immigration, right? All of these things. And that the president uniquely has to balance all those things in his head. And you, Your Honor, can't know how he is balancing that. Well, he just told us he can get him back, and that the reason he's not is because of the lawyers. So, yeah, I think it comes in, and I think I suspect the trial courts will give it great weight. There is a footnote to this, though, Brian, which is why I mentioned this piece that I wrote for Democracy Docket about the presumption of regularity, which is if you go back to the first Trump term and the Muslim ban, okay, Donald Trump says several times, I'm going to ban Muslims from entering the United States. They then enter an executive order and a policy that effectuates that. And the Trump administration it winds up in the Supreme Court. And the Trump administration is like, oh, you shouldn't pay any attention to what Donald Trump said on the campaign trail. You shouldn't pay any attention to what he said on social media. You should only be paying attention to the things that are in the actual executive order itself, or in the executive document itself. And the Supreme Court gave him a pass. Now, we'll see whether or not, and so that stayed in place. We'll see whether or not the courts have learned over time that that's ridiculous. I mean, it never made any sense to me. How could you say the president didn't intend to discriminate based on religion in the executive order, given all the things he had said? This one, I think, not only have they learned from that, but also this one's much tighter because he actually said it in the midst of what is supposed to be a court-ordered negotiation or discussion with the El Salvadorians.
Right. Well, look, no one has done more extensive and better analysis into this particular issue than you and your team at Democracy Docket. So highly recommend for anybody watching right now, if you'd like to stay on top of this stuff and also support fearless journalism and support Mark and his team who are really battling this administration in the courts where it matters most, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here in the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.